Well, Adam, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
I am so glad we could finally sit down. I know we've been kind of laughing a little bit here in the pregame, if you would, but I'm glad to finally have you on the podcast.
Well, again, man, I appreciate it. I love your show. And, you and I have we've been friends for right about almost a year now.
Yep.
And working together and whatnot. So I greatly appreciate you.
Well, and I thank you. And I was thinking about that as well, because we had met at Podfest, and it's kind of cool because I went there not thinking that I'd fit in, because there's a lot of podcasts out there that don't necessarily fit into the world that I'm a part of. Right. And when I got there, I met you and others who were part of the group, the Military Creator Con, which was kind of a subset of Podfest. And I tell you, it's been a great year, and I've met some really incredible people through it. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely fun. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, let me start with my famous get to know you questions that I like to throw out at the beginning of these. So the first one, I think, is kind of a little bit of a ground ball: coffee or tea?
That's believe it or not, that's actually a really tough one.
Really?
Yeah, it really is. I have a coffee line and I drink a lot of coffee. However, I love tea too. There's certain teas like Japanese green tea, like the old school way of making tea, and the old traditional Japan way that they do in Japan. I like that types of tea. I'm not a big, I won't say any big name tea companies but I'm not into the whole dipping the tea bag in the water kind of a thing. So I'm very snobbish when it comes to the teas.
Okay. More keep it in the glass jar. And what is that? An infuser? A diffuser?
It's like, so what you do is you take the tea leaves and you boil some water, and then you pour the water over the tea leaves, and then you pour that into another pot, and then you pour it into your glass, and then you whisk it with a bamboo whisk.
Nice.
It's very old school Japanese type of way of making tea.
Very cool. And I was not familiar. That's pretty neat. Yeah. Well, and I can't give you a hard time because I've gone down that road with coffee. So, it's got to be the exact temperature, the pour over, only right-hand turns, it's...
You're doing that wrong, lady. Like, come on, never mind. I'll do it myself. Let me just come back there and do it myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you tell the barista, hey, I want to pour over and this is how I want it done. Yeah. You get that look from them. That's the world I'm going into.
We got one of these guys that knows everything.
Nice. Exactly. So whether it is coffee or tea, what's your favorite place to have that drink?
In my house. With my own coffee blend, I tend to take sample packs when I travel, just because I know I'll drink it. And I'm sounding so snobbish. We can edit this out later, right?
Well, maybe. Yeah. Sure, Adam. For you.
Yeah. Prior to me being a snob, it was, I'd go to, in Arizona, they have a Circle K gas station. It was just like whatever you could get my hands on at that time. I wasn't big on the Starbucks or, Dunkin' Donuts was probably another one. I'd probably say Dunkin' Donuts because my son liked that, and I'd get him like the little breakfast donuts on his way to school. So that's what I'll go with.
It's funny you say that, because we both have sons that are in the same age bracket, and my son too, whatever it is about Dunkin' Donuts and the little breakfast, be it not usually donuts, usually some other sugary
donut holes kind of thing. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, he's exactly the same. He grew up that Dunkin' Donuts was the thing. I don't personally care for their coffee, because at least when I used to now I don't put sugar or anything in it, but when I would ask for sugar, they were the worst, because it's so sweet. They just pour so much sugar into it.
I'll have diabetes in my cup, please. Thank you.
Exactly. Exactly. So let me ask you, Adam, do you got a best or worst travel story?
Best or worst travel story? Oh man, that I've never been asked that question. I would probably say the worst. I've had several because I travel a lot.
I do. That's why I was looking forward to asking you that question.
What I would probably say is there's been times where I travel and sometimes I try to take direct flights, usually anywhere I go, if possible. That doesn't always happen. I hate getting like you get to your layover spot and then they cancel your next flight because I'm usually like I'm the type of person like I'm on like okay, I know I got an hour and a half, 2 hour layover here to get my next flight because I got something going on tomorrow. That means I can't afford to fly tomorrow. That means I got to be there tonight. I've had several incidences where they've canceled my flights and I was stranded for 2 days.
Wow.
And I end up sleeping. I don't mind sleeping in airports, but I think I've slept in 6 airports now across the country. Dallas, Fort Worth was one, and I got friends down there, but it was late at night, and I didn't want to bother anybody
Yeah.
to come pick me up. But yeah, those are probably like the worst. Any kind of travel, anything, good ones. I think all travel is good. It's just what you make of it. It's kind of a mindset. You're gonna have times where it sucks because either the plane's late or your car breaks down or you get the wrong rental car or whatever the case is. Just make the best of it. I think traveling as a whole is a blessing. I love to travel, but I hate when things get canceled and I'm stuck somewhere where I shouldn't be.
Absolutely. Well, and being stuck in airports, like you said, I mean, even if you know someone in the area, rarely do they live next to the airport. So
No,
by
and
the
yeah,
time they get there, get you
yeah,
out.
and then it's like then they got to turn around and drive you back like several hours later, and you're like, hey, thanks, or take an Uber that's going to cost you $50, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at everything that's happened in the last year, traveling is like I'm used to going to these airports, and I traveled so much, like I knew which airports that had the good restaurants that I'd like to eat at, so
Right.
I would purposely like go there. Um, I'll give you an example. Chicago Midway, some of the best popcorn in the world. It's Nuts on Clark. It's a funny name, but it's great popcorn. And I would sometimes try to route my flights through there for a layover so I could pick up some popcorn. It's dumb, I know, but
Oh,
that's
that's
what
awesome.
don't judge me, people. And I would go there. I got stranded there one night. I hate the airport. I don't like the airport per se, but I would try to travel to places where they had like the restaurants that I like to eat. If I was craving something, I'd try to have a layover somewhere so I could eat lunch or dinner there or whatnot. But now because of I say that and all because last year was very hard with the COVID stuff. Everything was shut down in the airports. A lot of restaurants were shut down in the airports, and there wasn't as many places open. And now I just started traveling. I've traveled last couple weeks, and I'm just starting to see things slowly kind of open back up. So hopefully that's we'll see more and more of that moving forward this year.
Yeah. I have to ask because you mentioned the no bad traveling, that there's something just about it that's pretty awesome that can be kind of cool.
Yeah.
So is flying and so forth a matter of we all have to do it? It's a convenience that is a necessity in our lines of work, especially if you're traveling to speak and so forth. But do you prefer or enjoy the old fashioned road trip by car
Oh,
when
yeah.
that is an opportunity?
I've done the cross country trips. I don't know, probably about 4 times. I've driven to DC to Arizona 4 times, and then every year I'll drive back to Wisconsin at least twice. And that's a 14-hour drive. If I'm in the Pennsylvania area, up to our house in Wisconsin, that's about a 15-hour drive.
Yeah.
Uh, and most people they'll make that into a 2-day trip. Not me. I'm a road warrior. I'll get up at 2 a.m. I'm there by 5 o'clock the next day. It's straight through.
Yeah.
Um, Driving for me is very therapeutic. The drive. One of the best drives I've had was from Arizona to DC, taking the southern route. I went through Midland, Texas, through Louisiana. I'd never been to Louisiana or Mississippi or Alabama, so I took all of that, and then I drove up into South Carolina, North Carolina, up through there. Spent the night in North Carolina, and it was a 32-hour drive. Drove the majority of it straight through, and it was awesome. It was a great experience, and it was peaceful. It gives you a lot of time to think about just life in general, how lucky we are, and I
Yeah.
love road trips.
I
Love
couldn't agree with you more. That's why I was curious when you said that. I kind of wanted to ask. Years ago, I'd went out to a men's retreat get together in the mountains. It was out in Colorado, and I
Yeah.
happened to have flown to that at that time. I've since driven out there a few times, but I happened to have flown out there. Well, some of the groups had come over from Europe. They had flown over here and actually flown to Florida and then driven up there as well. And it was interesting sitting around speaking to these men that had come over from Europe and talking about how fortunate we are here in America, that they had driven for 3 days, 2.5 days, and were still in the same country, something that was completely foreign to them.
Right.
And yeah, it was pretty incredible listening to them, and really drove home how fortunate we are in this country and how important the road trip is to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you get to see so many things just being on the road that you can't see at 40,000 feet.
Yeah.
Love it. Love road trips.
That's awesome. So speaking down that road, what is the place that brings you the most peace, where you kind of stop and enjoy life?
I'm an outdoors guy. I was born and raised mostly in Wisconsin. Uh, and I think going home, like my grandparents, the house that they're in was the first house I lived in. I was born in the hospital, but that was the first house I went home to. When I'm at my grandparents' house, I kind of have a ritual. When I pull into the driveway, I get out of the car, I go to the certain area of the yard, and I kiss the ground,
Yeah.
uh, and just kind of, I just kind of breathe it in. It's like, this is home. It's almost like, it's kind of like an area like where you have like a force field around you. That's the one place like you can go through anything in life, and no matter what it is, but when you get to that place right there, you're invisible, you're untouchable, nothing can hurt you. That's kind of like your safe spot, right? That's kind of what my grandparents' house is for me. The other place I would say is, just in a tree stand or or out on the lake fishing. I love being outdoors, especially now that I'm getting a little more seasoned.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't take that for granted anymore. I used to take that stuff for granted, like, oh, it sucks, I don't want to be out here freezing my ass off in the tree stand, whatever, blah blah blah. And now it's just like you're freezing your butt off, and you're just like, yeah, it sucks, but it's peaceful.
Yeah. It's not even about seeing the deer sometimes. I mean, get it. Granted,
Yeah.
I'd like to harvest
You want
something.
to, you
Yeah,
definitely
I'd like to harvest something, especially when you're flipping through social media and looking at everybody else. It's like, really, bud?
It's just you're flipping through, a deer walks by, you're too busy with your phone, you don't even know it's there. No, yeah, I'm an outdoors guy, so anytime I'm outdoors, I'm kind of at peace.
Now, do you hunt up in the Midwest? Because you've mentioned like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
You up that direction, or?
I hunt in Wisconsin, Arizona, and then I hunted here in Pennsylvania this past year too. So
In Arizona for deer?
coyotes. No, I haven't done them. Well, I used to. I've done archery mule
Oh, okay.
in Arizona, and you got.
I've just never thought of Arizona as hunting. So when you brought that up, now you got me a little curious.
Man, they got a ton of elk. Like elk hunt out there in Arizona is huge. Muleys, coos deer.
Okay.
They got mountain lions, sheep. I mean, it's all you'd be surprised. Black bear is another. It's another big one.
Okay.
Out there. You wouldn't think it,
right?
But there's a lot out there that you can hunt, and some of the like the bigger game like the elk and even the mule deer, like tags, unless you're doing archery, and some of those are just like right over the counter.
Oh, nice.
But it's a different type of hunt out there. It's not like Midwest where you throw a tree stand and you got a lot of stalking and glassing, and
yeah,
it's very strategic type of hunt out there. It's much different than what I grew up hunting, like just out of a tree stand and waiting for something to come by.
Well, and in recent years, I actually didn't grow up hunting. My dad, it just wasn't his thing. No, that just wasn't what he wanted to do. So I never really did much hunting. I didn't do any hunting growing up. And then in the last few years, I've started to go out with some of my family members. They had some property up in the Michigan area, and I go up there every fall. And you're right. And to your earlier point, what I love about the northern woods is how quiet they are in the winter. It's just unbelievably peaceful sitting up there in a tree stand. But yeah, on the bucket list or on the dream list here is to get out to like Wyoming. I've been out there a few times. I haven't been hunting out there yet. So
yeah,
exactly what you said.
There's a few big ones that are on my bucket list. And elk's one, and probably moose and up in Alaska or Canada somewhere, I think would be another.
That would be incredible. Absolutely incredible. So going down, let's just talk about a little bit of your journey. Maybe introduce who you are, Adam, to the listeners.
Oh boy, where do I begin? I'm a Pisces, like
I was
long walk
born at a
down the
very young
beach.
age.
I was gifted to no. Like I said, just a Midwest kid, grew up in Wisconsin, moved to Arizona. I was like 15, and then lived in Arizona for like 25 years or something like that. And while there, I joined the military. I was in the National Guard. Did that for about 9 years. And then as I kind of transitioned out of high school and trying to find my feet of what to do, I was more sales jobs. So I had a lot of sales positions, and then I got my CDL license and I drove truck for a little while. And then I eventually got into post-secondary education as like recruitment to recruit for online schools. I won't mention who, but I was kind of the poster child there for a while for one of them. And I did that for a couple of years until they did their big layoff in 2010. And I got into right around that time, I got into radio. I was asked to be a guest on a show to talk about military benefits and for education, GI Bill, and how that all worked, and went to go work for another university, did that for a year. And then finally I was just like, I'm done working for everybody else. My son's getting ready to start junior high, and I'm not going to ask somebody's permission to go watch his football game. So I quit. I didn't have any money in the bank. I was living paycheck to paycheck. So, and I say all of this because I'm telling you what not to do.
That's not the plan for how
Yeah,
you should do that.
yeah. This is well, you turned out fine. Yeah, believe me, there's a lot of speed bumps along the way, but I was a single father for about 15 years. I had custody. I took sole custody of my son when he was like 2. And as you and I mentioned, our boys are about the same age. He just turned 18
Yeah.
a few weeks ago. So it's been an interesting road, but I was kind of like where I'm at now. I started Heroes Media Group about 5 years ago. Prior to that, I had a business that was very successful for about 4 years. I shut that down, started Heroes Media Group, and now more and more doors are opening right over the last 5 years, excuse me. And I say all that because, a lot of people think you gotta be something, and you gotta do something at 20, 25, 30. I didn't know what I really wanted to do with my life until I was about 37, 38 years old.
Yeah.
And statistically, I don't know if I found this to be very interesting. Maybe your listeners will too. Men do the most in their life between the ages of 40 and 60 than they do between 20 and 40.
Really?
Yeah. Statistically, yeah. So I'm thinking, yeah, there's a chance, baby.
You and me both. That's exactly where I'm at, Adam.
Like, so statistically, men do more. They realize A, what they want to do in life, and B, they accomplish more between the ages of 40 and 60 than they do between the ages of 20 and 40. So I look at that as like I kind of got a second shot at life. My son's in high school. I got him to high school. He's doing good. He's getting ready to go to college next year. So he's basically on his own, right? At this point, like once they get into the high school, after junior, senior year, they're pretty much on their own because they're looking at college and whatever they're going to do on their
Even
own.
if they're still floating around leeching from you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I.e. the one, the other side of the house here.
but it's one.
But they're still pretty much very independent at that point.
Right. Exactly. And we say all that because they don't necessarily need us as much, right? They'll always need us, but we don't have to be, claws deep in what they're doing. So now all of a sudden it frees us up in time. And for me, this was very scary for me because I relied so much on him as opposed to him relying on me. I realized that I was more codependent on my son being there because I had somebody to take care of. And that was forcing me to do certain things. And it was also forcing me to hide certain things in my life and not worry about those things because I was so focused on him. That's all I cared about. I didn't care what happened to me. I want the best for him. But now that he's off doing his own and I don't necessarily, he can make decisions for himself. He could do that. Now all of a sudden, wait a minute. I have all this time on my hands. Now it's time for me to grow up.
Yeah.
And
That's very perceptive.
I never had that. I never really had that opportunity to figure out who I was or what it was that I wanted to do, because I started off having a family at such a younger age, where I wasn't meant, they say men mentally start maturing at 25. I disagree. I was well into my 30s before I realized that, hey, I got to get some stuff straight if I'm really going to make this happen.
Well, and I think this is just my personal journey. I think that word maturity sometimes gets misunderstood also.
Absolutely.
So I moved out my parent. In fact, I was giving my mom a hard time the other day saying that my 18-year-old is almost 19, which means, I was out of the house in like 30 days. I'm thinking he's about 10 months overdue to finding someplace to go. I was somewhat kidding. Listeners, I was somewhat kidding. But that being said,
I'm all about, here's a roadmap and an apple. Good luck. Call me when you get there.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll pay for the first tank of gas. After that, hopefully you find something that pays after that. So that being said, though, at a very young age, or right out of 19, 20 years old, I was starting a company. I had my first house and so forth. But looking back, those were mature actions. Granted, I had friends that were playing video games even in the late 90s. They were playing video games full time or hanging out, smoking weed, whatever the case may be, and clearly were very immature, if you would. But in many ways, my decisions were running from something or running to something, kind of like what you just said. And then having a son very young forces you to mature, but that doesn't mean that you are well-rounded. And right. I think that that's something that comes definitely later in life. And I'm very encouraged also, because I'm right now in my early 40s as well. And it's funny, maybe, when you hear something over and over again, it's a sign typically. So I was just listening to Glenn Beck, not an hour before you and I had this conversation, and his birthday was yesterday. And he was talking about how it was a really good birthday, but his worst one was at 40 years old. And the reason was because at 40 years old, he had been like 3 years sober, and he felt like he hadn't accomplished anything. He was, he just felt like he was in this position where he really hadn't done anything yet. And then by 50 years old, and I don't recall the exact number, but it was something like 7 best-selling, he had the radio show, 7 best-selling books and so forth. He'd really come into his own in those 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And people think, I think the thing with us is, one, we're impatient beings, and two, we put such a time limit on it. And not to go biblical or anything like that per se, but for me, that it works for me. And I'll say this, like, we think that it's on our time. It's not. That's the joke. That's a joke. It's not on our time. Like, if you believe in God, it's on God's time, for me, or for those of you that are spiritual, the universe, or however you want to, twist what I'm saying to fit you. But for me, it's like, I'm on God's time. So it's like, I can get upset all I want. At the end of the day, I kind of laugh at it now, because it's just like, it'll happen when it's supposed to.
Yep.
And when you start mentally preparing yourself for that, where you realize that it's not on your time, you would be surprised at just how much easier life gets.
Yeah. The relief that comes with that is incredible.
Yeah. When you have the, whatever, it'll happen when it's supposed to. Huge difference.
Yeah. I would argue that it makes you better at what you're trying to do. Like, whatever it is, that be it in the business world or, whatever that personal growth is, just giving yourself permission to breathe and to push into that. It's going to be incredible.
You get to enjoy life. Yeah. Imagine that. Like, instead of stressing out, enjoy the process, enjoy the ins and outs. And if something goes wrong, it's a learning opportunity. It's just a matter. It's a mindset of what it boils down to, how you want to react to the situation. Yeah. That's it.
Well, I think that's one of those lessons that we don't, but we live in a time in the last year and a half of so much fear. And actually, you talk about, because I also have faith. I also believe very similarly to what you just said, that things will happen when God wants them to happen. That's my personal belief. Everyone has their own, whatever those may be. But I mean, we live in a time where people actually think we control things like viruses, or we have control over life and death. And no matter how technologically advanced we get,
Yeah.
we're not going to have control over those things.
No,
If so, people wouldn't die from cancer or diabetes or anything else.
You're pretty ignorant if you think that you have control over what's really going on, because you don't. That's part of life. Sit back, smile, and enjoy it. And if something happens that you don't like it, great. But your reaction to it can be a positive. No matter how bad it can be, you can always twist a positive out of a bad situation.
Yeah.
My opinion. That's just my opinion.
I couldn't agree with you more, as you know. Let's go back to your time in the National Guard, just because I want to go there real quick before we go forward. Sure. So were you, was that full time in the National Guard then? And were you?
I did, let me see here. It would have been about 4 years full time for the Guard. I worked for a drug task force at the time. I don't believe it's around anymore. Had a blast doing
so more like border type stuff, or
no? Well, we had a unit that did that. I was what they call DDR, drug demand reduction. So I would go around to elementary schools, high schools, post-secondary schools, and then community-based organizations. And we talked about drugs and alcohol and the cause. So law enforcement had the DARE program.
Right.
They came in and started it. We'd partner with them. So they came in and did their program, and then we would come in behind them and do like an additional advanced class on certain drugs or in the cause and effects of what to look for, and not just the cause and effects on the human body, but the cause and effects of the community of those people who are doing those things.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So good reception. So more aimed at like high school type.
It was
ages
more
or college, or
like fifth grade was our, like, fifth, sixth, and seventh grade were probably more the targeted side of it, because that at that time, I mean, you're talking early 2000s, and that's kind of where the DARE program was at that time, was in the middle school grades. Right. We did do some high schools. We had some high schools that we did, and then a lot of the community-based organizations, nonprofit organizations in the community. And then every now and then we would work with local other law enforcement agencies. Where I was at in Northern Arizona, we had the local PD, the sheriffs, the county sheriffs, the FBI, and then we did. We were far north, so we had the tribal leaders of the Navajo Nation, Hopi Nation, and stuff like that. Sometimes we would do stuff with them. We did a few raids with some, we had a house. We went to a house where the day before it blew up, and it was a meth lab.
Oh yeah.
We went in and investigated. We got to help out with some of the investigation and just look at what the cause and effects of how that stuff happened and why it happened and whatnot. So we took that and we could educate people on what to look for in your community when you see certain things, what to be aware of, and how to report it to local law enforcement.
Okay. This would have been what, the late 90s, give or take, early 2000s?
Late 90s, early 2000s. It would have been 99 to about 2004, roughly.
This may be something you don't know, and I'm just asking out of curiosity while you're talking about it. Do you know anything about the effectiveness of those programs? Did you ever see any studies or anything?
You know what, that was so long ago. I don't. I remember, we were what they called active duty special work. So we got orders for a year for this because it was all about funding, right? So the Army Guard, the Air Force Guard for those particular states would have a pool, and then they would have these teams that would go out, and you had a team for DDR. We had another team that ran border missions with the helicopters, and they worked with Border Patrol and customs at the border and stuff like that. You had other ones that did other things, and I don't really know what they did, because I was more of the drug demand reduction stuff and working with the kids. I'd like to be behind that podium and being in front of the classroom and teaching, because I felt like we were making a difference.
Yeah.
And that was the cool part of it for me.
Very cool. Yeah, and I only ask on that just because you talk in the late 90s or 2000s, the things we were worried about when it came to meth and it came to some of these other drugs, and then coming full circle to where we are right now from a law enforcement perspective with the scourge or the true pandemic, if I may,
Yeah.
with what we're dealing with fentanyl and opioid overdoses. And
Yeah.
stuff.
I can't even fathom going through it, the fentanyl phase.
Yeah.
Right. It just like when that first came out, I'd have, flashbacks of, just talking about LSD or MDMA or, and stuff like that. And some of these things that you talked about, like, you have marijuana and now you got the CBD industry and stuff like that. And it's like breaking the two up and telling people, there's a difference between one and the other, right?
Right. Yeah.
Comes from the same plant, but there's two different strands, and scientifically you can do that. And then MDMA, I actually a couple of years ago, I talked to a guy, a veteran that did an MDMA, which is ecstasy for those who don't know, did a study, and they're using a very what they call micro dosing of MDMA to help treat PTSD.
Really? Very interesting.
Yeah, and they're getting ready to start. I just talked to him about 3 weeks ago, and they're getting ready for a phase 3 trial with that. And he's been doing it for several years, and he said he hasn't had an episode or any bad dreams or anything like that for about 3.5, 4 years now.
Very interesting. I'll have to look that up.
That is, it's like you're sitting there blowing your mind, because he's like, yeah, I used MDMA, and I was like, whoa. Don't say that too loud,
But a lot of these quote unquote illegal drugs got their start in the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh yeah. I mean, you look at, the early 20s and 30s, heroin was used.
Right.
Some LSD was used at some form or fashion for to treat schizophrenia.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was, and I could be wrong on the schizophrenia part, so don't quote me on that, but it's amazing, because they're all class 1 drugs, I believe.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to see studies where some of the stuff is helping people, and it just kind of like, I don't. Well, my initial reaction was like, hey, we're gonna help you. We're gonna have you microdose MDMA. I'm good, bro.
Yeah, exactly. That seems like a bad idea to me.
It's like, no, I'm good. Like I've seen what MDMA has done to people firsthand. Like we've I've seen it cook somebody from the inside out, and like, no, I'm good.
But it's no different with the opioids. I mean, there are people that truly need the pain relief, and I've seen. And I have the trepidation, like when it's a family member or something, and all of a sudden the hospitals or whatever, like, hey, we need to put them on this strong pain reliever. We just recently had a family member going through something that this was required. And obviously, coming from my line of work, it makes me extremely nervous.
Yeah.
But they do have a legitimate use, and provided that it's being watched by a doctor and they are weaning them off of it.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. It was, as long as it's being watched,
yeah,
and not abused,
right?
There's some good there. But I mean, you being in the career that you're in, that's not always the case.
Well, this show being primarily for law enforcement and listened to by law enforcement, the listeners know that what it's like right now with the number. Well, depending on where they work in the country, maybe if you're at a very small PD in an extremely rural area, you might have different problems. But if you are especially in states like Florida and Arizona and so forth, and you're near any kind of city center, you are going to overdose call after overdose call after overdose call. You're finding it's night of the living dead. I mean, you're finding these people laying in bathrooms at the 7-Eleven. You'll get the phone call. This car's been sitting at the gas pumps for 2 hours. There's a guy in there. His lips are turning blue. Those calls are so common right now. It's unbelievable. And then the flip side of it, and we just recently, I referenced it in one of my morning roll calls, is because of the way these are pretty much powders and so forth, it's very easy for the officer to be susceptible to them. So just having interaction with that person or the things around them, next thing you know, because obviously the officer has no tolerance to these drugs, they may be falling out and overdosing just simply from being in proximity to the drug.
Yeah. It's it's crazy. It's crazy. So I did that was the task force. Did that for several years, and then like I said, the Army, my primary job was transportation. I was a truck driver. Didn't really do much of it the last several years I was in. I got because of the task force job and working DDR, I was tasked out to do a I was put in an instructor's position for new recruits. So I would give them a taste of what like the military life was like before they went to basic training and stuff like that. So I wasn't a drill sergeant. I didn't hold the Smokey Bear hat, but I was in that position, and I was actually training to do that. And then I broke my ankle, so that didn't work out for me. But it was a fun job being behind the podium, and because you realize that you're prepping the next group to kind of take over your spot, so to speak.
That's very cool. So that really led, it sounds like, to that journey of 5 years ago, you kind of starting Heroes Media Group, because it sounds like you've kind of been in that educational, public speaking, message delivery line in one way or another. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it started with I had a company with a business partner, didn't pan out. Well, it went well for a couple of years, but we just parted ways. But it was the same line of work that I do with Heroes Media Group, although it was just podcasting. Now HMG, we do podcasts, we do audiobooks, we publish books, we have a transcription service, and there's a plethora of other things that we do and that we're offering. But it all ties back into kind of what I learned from the military, and I would say I learned it from the military, and then just falling on my face being a single parent. Really. And that's kind of how I decided. And I'm really stubborn. So I said, I have to make this work, because I'm not going to go work for somebody else.
Right.
And ultimately that's what it's been.
Yeah. You mentioned that earlier when you said that's what not to do, but I was listening to a very successful podcast host. I'm not gonna mention his name again, but someone that I was listening to the other day, and he said exactly that. He said the hardest place to be is in the middle. But if you put yourself in a position, or you're born into a position where you have no other choice, you're probably going to be pretty successful, because you don't have any other choices. The hardest place to be successful from is in the middle, is the point he was making, because it's just comfortable enough that you're not going to force change, but you're uncomfortable enough that you're constantly whining about it, was essentially his point.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly right.
So Heroes Media Group, let's go there for just a couple minutes. You talk a lot about community heroes, but what I like about it is you expand that. So when people hear that term community heroes, they usually would think law enforcement, first responders, and they would of course probably think military, because they're heroes both in the community and abroad is what they do. But you've expanded it beyond that. Can you take a little bit into
community? Anybody can be a hero, right? When you think about it, but our definition, when I started this, the definition that the vision that I had was our law enforcement, our firefighters, first responders, medical staff, obviously the military and the veterans. I'll always do stuff for them, for obvious reasons. But then educators is another one. Teachers. There's a clergy piece there as well. I think teachers is, they have such a hard job, and I think they're one of the most underappreciated positions in this country. And I guess I'd say, against my better judgment, I went and I got licensed as a high school teacher. So I hold a state license for the state of Arizona. And I can still substitute teach anytime I go back there if I want to. And I worked in the high schools for a few years down there, substitute teaching, and really got involved in just to see how underappreciated these teachers are, and how their hands are tied with all these different rules and regulations and stuff like that. And really, the teachers are the ones that are kind of molding our future, right? When you think about it, they're molding our kids, they're molding our future, and so I think they're important. And I think the clergy side of it, we were growing up, it was, you would God this, God that. We didn't have a problem, saying God or talking about God in the classroom where I grew up, back in the day. Now it's taboo. You can't say that. You'll offend somebody. I drop the F-bomb like it's going out of style. Like I know what offensive is. Like saying God, it's not offensive. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Like here's the thing. You start taking that out of the equation, now you're really going to have some problems. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And I would argue we have them.
yeah,
I
yeah,
would
we have
argue they're coming full
knock,
circle.
knock, they're here. You know, I have gone, I've tried to go out of my way to really bring that up. And I think even more so nowadays, it's needed. I think God's needed in our lives, whether you believe in him or not. You know, I got friends that aren't believers, and that's fine. I don't, whatever. I'm just telling you what works for Adam.
Yeah.
So whatever you believe in, but believe in it. And for us, I think, you know, God is needed right now in this country, more in the world, really, more than ever before, because it's, I tell you what, it's going to hell real quick.
Yeah.
Uh, it's on the path that we're taking right now. It's kind of scary what's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years if it continues down this path. So I say all of that because heroes, we have to stick together, and we have to we have to support those that are out there protecting us. We have to support those that are out there that are doing the things that either we can't do or weren't willing to do to
Yeah.
save everybody else. People like you and the other, you know, blue line folks that are out there right now walking a beat or answering, you know, calls or answering dumb calls to people that are talking in mailboxes or some shit like that. It's like they're out there doing it, protecting you. And it's infuriating to think that we want to piss on these people because one was too rough with the other. Listen, it's, if you break down anything in life, Wayne, anything, you have corporations, corporate America. I'll even go as far as throwing the military under the bus. It doesn't matter what job or career path you take in life. There's always somewhere, there's always a bad seed in a group,
Yep.
right? And it's that
Absolutely.
one bad seed that F's it up for everybody else. But everybody, oh, let's focus on the bad. You got one bad thing and you got 10 good things that are going on over here. And instead of focusing on the 10 positive things, you want to focus on the one bad thing. Why? Because it tells a story,
Yep.
right? And that's, in my opinion, that's crap. And I got so tired of listening to the negative things that were being talked about our community heroes that I wanted a platform. I wanted to create a platform where our community heroes' voices could be heard. I want to hear about what the what the police officer did shoveling our neighbor's driveway the other day. I walk out here and I'd say, "Hey, sir, you need help?" "No, I'm almost done." And so I walked up and I got his name and whatnot. I'm going to send the department some coffee later on. It's like it's little things like, no, you don't need to do that. You're right, I don't have to do that, but I'm going to do that because you took the time to shovel this old lady's
Yeah.
sidewalk. You got firefighters. We got a volunteer. And we live in a little borough, so like all the firefighters here, if there's a fire, they're all voluntary, so they all have other jobs and stuff, so they
Right.
either leave their other jobs or to see who's on call so they could go and help other departments contain that fire. Like, I don't it's funny, I don't necessarily think that's the best way to do it. Like, "Oh, I'm at work, man, I can't go to that fire." Sucks for that house that's burning down right now, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I say
I
all of
think it's
that.
crazy. Just my
Yeah,
personal opinion with the whole
yeah,
volunteer fire department. When I was out in
it's
Montana, I'm like,
yeah,
you don't get paid to do
yeah,
this? He was like, well,
like,
they offer free training. I'm like,
yeah. Oh, well,
okay.
in that case, by all means, it's but and then the teachers, I think the teachers don't get law enforcement, they don't get a voice. And I'm going to say it, I'm pissed off of how they've been treated over the last couple of years. It's infuriating, the negative press that our law enforcement, it's not deserved. Yes, there's some bad seeds, but don't focus on those bad seeds. Let's focus on all the good things that our law enforcement officers are doing, and then let's show them the support that they deserve, because half of the departments are understaffed anyway. The other ones, the ones that are understaffed, are overworked, and then you wonder why you're having, issues with the mental issues, and suicide rates are up, and stuff like that, because we're not given the support that they rightfully deserve. Teachers, the same thing. Um, and I say all this long-winded, and I'll bring it back in here by saying I started Heroes Media Group because I wanted the platform for our community heroes to come to and share their stories, their good things. And it's been very hard, especially in the law enforcement side of it, because it's like, I'll talk to a police chief or whatnot. Okay, talk to our PR person. And they're like, you want to do what? I was like, yeah, I'm a media. I say media company. And at first, like media, they're like, all right, who you with? CBS, NBC, CNN, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, whoa, time out. First off, I'm not fake. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right now. I was like, now I'm offended.
Right.
But
I actually tell the truth. So I would not qualify as any of the above.
Yeah. I'm like no one you've met before. Trust me. Like, I'll give you an example. Local here, I won't say what city, but the mayor here was just like, well, he got too political with it, and he was just like, well, you talk about BLM, and the chief here, it just happens to be a black guy, and great guy. Funny, really, he's really funny. And he's like, some people get offended by that. And I was like, do you get offended by that, sir? And he's like, well, not exactly. And I was just like, neither do I. And I was like, I get why they're doing it and whatnot, but I was like, you're the police officer, the one that upholds the law. He's like, yeah, but we got to be careful what we're doing. I was like, so I got to see the law enforcement side, and some people, and I was just like, my mind's blown. Like, they're tying your hands. So we're walking out. And he says, yeah, they're tying our hands. I mean, this is the police chief. He was the incoming police chief that came up from a big city up the East Coast. And I was just like, well, if you decide that you would like to use our platform to share a good story that one of your officers did, I would be more than happy to take the story and post it on our website. And I left it at that. And I've tried going around the country doing that, and some like the idea, but some are so afraid that it's like I'm going to bait and switch them, that the law enforcement has a hard time talking to even people like me, who legitimately is out there to support and promote and empower what it is that they're doing. So that side of it's been frustrating, but not to the fault of the law enforcement personnel. It's just been frustrating because the mainstream media has painted such a crappy picture of our community heroes. I'll say it like that.
Yeah. And sadly, some of the organizations from mainstream media, as what you mentioned, tend to take information and they'll put a certain spin to it. They'll change it up. And because of that, there is a healthy cynicism or concern with putting information out there.
Right. It's what fits their narrative.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've gone as far as I've gone to several places up and down the Northeast here. And I've said, listen, just have your PR person. If an officer, I want to know if the officer pulls over and plays basketball with the kids. We've seen that story. That stuff happens.
Absolutely.
You hear about the officers that are, like the one here shoveling sidewalks and stuff like that. That stuff's out there, but you never really hear about it unless it's on a local level. And screw that. We need to be shouting that story on a national level. You know what I mean? Because that's a positive thing, right?
It is. Now, personally, what I have seen, because I've seen those stories firsthand. Those stories, I've seen the stories of officers pulling out their wallet and paying for somebody's meal, or, taking care of a situation. Maybe it's someone that doesn't have a ride somewhere and they need to be able to get to see family or whatever. And I've seen officers do that personally, and it doesn't even go up the chain of command. Like, nobody knows it happened, because that officer, and rightfully so, or they have that choice. And so often they're just modest about it. They're like, I didn't do it for I don't want this to be public knowledge.
Right.
So nobody knows that took place. And I've seen it with my own eyes. Like I could tell multiple stories.
That's the problem. There's a guy on Instagram who was He's a law enforcement guy. I won't mention his name, but he's down in Texas. A lot of people probably know who he is, but he's now a cop, and he had kind of a rough, when he got out of the Marine Corps, he was kind of rough, but he's now a cop and does great things. And he raises money for other police officers and organizations across the country, and he uses his platform on social media to help raise money. And he's done stuff for homeless guys and stuff like that, and it's shown. And he doesn't do it for recognition by any means, because he had the fame long before he was a law enforcement officer. He does it now. He uses his platform now to share it, because try to set the example for other people to don't be afraid to come out and share your story of what you're doing. But I totally get what you're saying. A lot of guys don't want that recognition and whatnot. They just want to just do their job day to day or whatnot. But there's got to be a way that we can share some stories about our community heroes out there, and they're out there. It's just a matter of finding them and seeing if they're willing to share what they went through.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. And the fact that, as you know, that's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing, is those positive police news stories.
Yeah.
I think it's important to do that. And I think it's also important to show law enforcement in another light, because some, in the same can be true in military, they only see the uniform, or they only see the badge, the gun, whatever that is. They don't actually see the person, and they don't actually see the humanity of the job and what they're dealing with, both internally and.
You say something here, and I can't help but to think about it, but you say people just see the badge, right? Or some people, I'm not a racist person, because I don't see color. I'm colorblind. I'm not legitimately colorblind, but when it comes to people, I don't look at the race of somebody's skin. I don't look because he's a law enforcement. I got pulled over in Arizona the other day, and it scared the crap out of me. I was like, what was I doing? And it turned out that the tag on my son's car was expired. I didn't know that. It was my fault. I totally agree with. I was like, well, sir, can I step out of the vehicle? Whatnot? He's like, yeah, sure. And he was very nice and very professional, but it was funny, but big dude. And my son's like, how'd you handle that so well? Because he's never been in that situation. I said, when somebody pulls over, and I start teaching him how to respond when a police. Don't do what you see these dumbasses, on social media, like, oh, cops, blah, 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 blah. How about you won't, like, nothing bad will happen if you do what the guy with the badge just tells you to do, and just listen and be simple about it. Like, it's that simple. Don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Like
that's what's so dangerous about this rhetoric right now, and what's going on, is because they literally create this image in the minds, especially of younger people, that law enforcement's the enemy. They're out killing certain groups of people, or,
Well, who's the first person you're going to call when somebody's robbing your house?
Right.
Cops. Who's the first person you're going to call when somebody broke your window, or you're getting shot at by a drive-by because some really gang member, that happened here recently. Oh, I'm going to call the cops. Wait a minute. You were the one just 10 minutes ago bad-mouthing the guy that's protecting your door.
Yeah.
Like, shut up. No. It doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? You can't have your cake and eat it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like,
and I don't know how many times in recent, years that I've pulled over a younger person, or my guys have pulled over a younger person, and I've made contact with them either on seeing or whatever. And they're like, man, you guys were really cool with me. Like, acting like that's something that's never happened before.
Yeah.
Like, this is someone, what do you mean you didn't shove a gun in my face? Like, that's what we were supposed to have done. It's like, no, this is what normally happens.
You mean I'm not going to jail? No.
Yeah. Did you commit a crime? And even then,
that's all I'm telling you to do.
Yeah. What was the crime? There's so many factors that people just don't understand.
Yeah. I don't know. So to answer your original question, that's why I created HMG is I want to highlight and bring positivity to the community for our community heroes.
And just so the listeners know, because I've been starting to push, which I should have been doing all along, and I apologize, Adam, but I'm horrible about it. But I've been trying to push our relationship with HMG more, because I want people to know that there's a lot of other content on there too. So it's not just a bunch of police and military shows either. From a content standpoint, maybe give us a little bit of what they can find.
We have shows on the Second Amendment. We got the Arms Room show is our first show that we've had, and I brought that over from another platform. And they teach about home defense and how to handle, for new shooters and advanced shooters, and dirt medicine and stuff like that. It's very informative, and it's a really cool cool show. We have business shows that talk, business. Like we'll have a political show. We got one that's coming down the pipe right now that just signed on with us. Women's issues. We have a lot that talk about women veterans and women's issues as a whole. We had some sports ones that are starting to come back now that we kind of took a year off from the sports. For a lot of different reasons that I won't get into, but so I mean, you can kind of find a little bit. Law enforcement, we got your show that's up there. We haven't found a firefighter show, or I guess you guys would call them hose draggers. We haven't found
or second responders. I'd be gentle. I wouldn't say anything. Oh,
wow.
sorry. Did I say that out loud? No, those guys, they really are great.
Man, it's your show. But no, I mean, we, and a lot of the people, we're HMG is a big melting pot. It doesn't matter your political side of affiliation. We got people on the left, the right, and down the middle, and everybody gets along. We don't always agree with it, but we're family here, and that's kind of like the environment I wanted to like create. It's like, I have shows and what you would call in the business world clients that work with us on a monthly basis. I don't call them clients; they're family members. You come on in your family to us. Yeah. And I think that's important. And I really like the fact that a lot of shows are close. A lot of shows know each other. And, my goal for it moving forward is to us eventually be under the same roof together, for like a weekend, teaching and learning stuff about each other and how we can advance or help each other move forward with whatever it is that we're doing individually as well. So bring like a family reunion, if you will, is what I'm going to call it. So
yeah, I think that's great. And I think that is something that really drew me too, but it started with meeting y'all in Orlando, like I referenced earlier. And it just really, that was the feeling of this subgroup that was at what was Podfest. And then I think you've really embodied that within what you're doing with Heroes Media Group. And it's both something that it's attracted me to it, but I'm also, I mean, with this rise of what we're seeing with cancel culture and so forth, it's nice to be part of a group that is kind of elevating everybody within it. We're able to uplift and to work with each other and not necessarily worry so much about those petty differences. We can look at more of the things we have in common together.
Yep.
So you've got some other things on the horizon, just real quick. What are some of those things that you're working on? I know you've got some different product lines and so forth.
Yeah. So we got Heroes Media Group's got a new website that's going to be launching here very, very soon. New look, new feel. I'm super stoked. The show pages, I know you guys are going to love it. It's just easy to navigate and easier ways to listen to all the shows and stuff like that. So I'm pumped about that. New shows coming up as well. And then some other projects that, I started a beverage company last year called HMG Beverage, which is one of our sister companies. We've had a coffee line, and now we're going to have a spirit line coming out. We're going to have a bourbon and a gin coming out here in the next couple months. We got to get I'm learning a lot about the alcohol business and all of the stuff you have to go through
right
to get everything legal. Well,
the good thing is because it's so heavily taxed, you don't have to worry about them shutting that down in the world of COVID-19. So it's a good business to go into, right?
Oh, yeah. It really, actually, it really is, and we lucked out with the group that we're going to be working with. So stay tuned for more of that. And then I got another company that's launching beginning of March, where I can't say the name of it because we're not supposed to yet. But we're basically we're giving custom suits. And we're doing it right now for veterans that are in the transition phase, and then eventually we're going to be doing it for very, very soon. We'll be doing it for law enforcement, where we'll be able to customize their suits to fit them with their equipment on and stuff as well.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm excited, as we've had several conversations offline, and I'm excited for the future and what you've got going on. Let me ask you, Adam, the question I ask everybody, every guest of the show. What is the one takeaway? And we've had a lot of different things we've talked about, but the one takeaway, the one thing that we can do or that law enforcement officers can do that's going to make a difference in their personal lives? What's that one thing?
I think, oh, geez, what law enforcement could do in their personal lives?
And really, you can extend it to military, to whomever,
No,
but
I think the big thing, regardless, is communication. You got to be able to communicate. If you're, and this ties in with, and I probably learned this from the military, but there's a lot of veterans that get into law enforcement and stuff. I think when you're done with your shift and you get home, you need that time to, whether it's to drive home to kind of unwind or whatever from the shift, but don't. I think what happens is a lot of times we shut down and we don't communicate how we're feeling, or and I'm trying to get it to where it's not like, oh, you're alpha male, you can't show your feelings. It's not that. It's communicate with your loved ones. If you're married, if you got kids, spend time with them. Communicate with how you're feeling. Don't hide all of that stuff in. If something happened at work and it's bothering you, talk about it. You might want to hide it and just push it to the back room, somewhere. Don't communicate and know that if you don't feel like talking to your family member or whatnot, know that there's other people out there that are willing to listen. I'm willing to listen. This is reason why like I said earlier, that's why we started a platform. I gave you guys a platform to be heard. I got 2 ears. I don't hear very good, but when you call, I'll sit and I'll talk you through stuff, or I'll at least listen, and right. If you need just somebody to vent to or whatnot, then, pick up the phone and give us a call. I'd be more than happy to listen to what you have to say.
That's awesome. And so important, and something on so many different levels, both like what you're saying, just being willing to listen and have that part of communication, but then also just being able to talk with others within your circles. So that's great advice. What is the best way for people to contact you, Adam?
You can contact us through our website at heroesmediagroup.com, or you can email me at adam@heroesmediagrp.com.
Perfect. I'll be sure to link both of those up. And it's been a great relationship, Adam. I appreciate you coming on. I wanted to take this minute to introduce everyone to you and to what Heroes Media Group was all about, and that did not disappoint. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam.